most of the time, this is what is called a localized inflation, because it's inflation on specific goods and services. It's not something that is widespread. On the other side, there is also what is called cost push inflation. So this is exactly the same, but on the other side of the economy, on the production side, when for some reasons or another, there is a huge increase in the cost of production of goods. And there is one typical example in countries that do not produce oil or fuel. So we rely a lot on imported energy. And when there is an increase in energy coming from the outside, because the increase in energy sometimes just the countries producing oil or gas or any energy increases because maybe there is a disruption in the logistics or many other reasons, or insecurity in the oil producing countries. Quickly, that inflation or increase in the prices is going to be reflected throughout the line, including in countries that are not oil producers, but they are relying on oil, other energies to produce their goods and services. Typically, that's something that is very present in Lebanon, because as soon as there is increase in the cost of production, producers, companies, any other enterprises, they reflect that in their cost of production, because otherwise they'll lose money. So that's what is called a cost-pushed inflation. In French, I think it's called something like l'inflation tirée par les prix, les coûts de production. Then there is monetary inflation. This is what I was explaining last time, when there is too much money circulating in the economy. This is typically in countries where, for reasons related to budget issues, the country, the central bank issues more money, just because they cannot, they have access to that tool of, in French we call it création de la monnaie, meaning that I am the central bank, my government has a deficit, but we don't have any other reserve, and we cannot go to the loan market to get a loan to increase our debt. Most of the time, they just create money. In French, we call it planche à billets. So they will create money, and they will just put that money in circulation. The problem is that when there is a new money in the economy, without an equivalent production, it just like the central bank is putting a lot of money in the economy, but there is no equivalent increase in the production. This is also a huge source of inflation, and this is something that has been also characteristic of countries that are having difficulties in managing their income and expenditure. And I'll be curious to know among these sources of inflation, which ones are most prevalent in Lebanon. The last two are wage-related spirals, meaning actually, as you know, in most countries, a lot of workers are demanding an increase in their salaries. But in the same way as the monetary inflation, when there is an increase in the salaries of a big number of workers, mostly in the public sector, without an equivalent increase in the production, what we call the real economy, automatically there is going to be an adjustment somewhere, because the economy is something that is complex but very much linked. The different aspects of the economy, they are linked to each other. If suddenly everyone earns more money, they're going to be buying more goods and services. And automatically, because the goods and services available have not increased. And as we've seen, inflation is the adjustment between demand and supply. Automatically, the prices are going to go up. And also, finally, what is called in economics expectations and psychology. This is also something all of us can relate to easily, is the fact that anticipating that something is going to happen increases the likelihood that that thing actually happens. For instance, we expect that, for instance, or we have several times experienced an increase in prices every time there is an increase in oil, for instance, and everyone suddenly starts buying food to store them at home, like water, rice, etc., depending on the context. Automatically, the expectations that prices are going to increase makes people anticipate on those increases, and they start making decisions that are actually going to make that something they wanted to avoid in the first place actually happen. So in a nutshell, this is the main 5 sources of inflation. And the thing is, in most cases, they will come at the same time, because they are not, you can have, and that's actually the definition of inflation, is that if you have very localized inflation in one area of the country, there is a problem, for instance, that resulted in the increase of some food or transport, but really localized, you call it inflation, but it's not something that is nationwide. It will still be very localized inflation. It will be the same, for instance, if there is an inflation in education, for instance, for some reasons, the school fees are increased, but the rest of the economy remains as is. In that case, we'll call it education-related inflation or school fees inflation, but we cannot call it generalized or national level inflation. I'll stop here for this first additional information we want to share with you. I would like to see if there are questions, but really this is something that is essential to know, but also to know how to manipulate. And as we're going to see, the one of the utilization of inflation actually is moving from current or nominal prices to the constant, because you need to be able also to take away the effects of inflation when you are doing some computations. Any questions so far before we move ahead? Question, comments?
I have only one question. I'm really sorry to repeat it again. So actually, within the factors you have already mentioned, there is something maybe we could mention also, the devaluation of the local currency, because here in Lebanon, not like other countries, every country يعني انه actually apply only the local currency, but here we are applying or using the LBP and the US dollar currency. So starting 2019, and because of the devaluation of the exchange rate, this caused also an inflation. So, but actually this is not mentioned and not necessary to be mentioned here, but in Lebanon, يعني this and cause the inflation in the country. You put it in the monetary inflation. Oh.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is not exactly the same thing, but they are very related. Actually, how does devaluation work? The difference between devaluation and monetary inflation is that devaluation is intentional. It is intentional in the way that the central bank, here really the central bank is that the core of the inflation, because they are the ones who managed the monetary policy. In the devaluation is that one morning, the central bank decides that before $1 was equivalent to, using euros, maybe €1. Oh, it's not exactly that. It's going to be €1 equals 1.5 US dollars. They just decide that, and then everything is adjusted accordingly. This happens actually when I'm trying to recall from my lecture in economics long time ago. This happens when there is always, it comes from the imbalances between the real economy and the financial economy, meaning that there is an imbalance between what the country produces as goods and services and the money in circulation. And in theory, actually, the devaluation is one way of improving the country competitiveness in terms of its exportation. Yes, that's in theory. So, for instance,
clear.
If you could share with us maybe what are the key goods and services exported by Lebanon, the assumption is that by lowering the value of the Lebanese pound, buying Lebanese goods and services by foreigners is going to be affordable, more affordable. It means that the Lebanon is going to be able to export more and more goods and services because their money has decreased. So someone who has dollars can buy more Lebanese goods and services if the Lebanese pound is devaluated. So that's one monetary policy that is put in place to improve the competitiveness for exports. But it is the exact contrary when it comes to improving the inputs. Because contrarily, if the Lebanese pound is devaluated and I want to import goods and services that are in a foreign currency, I'm going to need more Lebanese pound to buy to bring in inputs. So you see there to the two sides. It depends on what the country is trying to promote, either promoting imports or promoting exports.
Okay.
But most of the cases, really, the issue comes from the fact that there is an imbalance between goods and services, the real economy, and the financial economy, which is the money, the amount of money being circulated.
Yes, that's why they have to issue more money.
So then, exactly. So that's they will decide that they devaluate, but concretely, the way they evaluate is to issue more money and just put that. So issuing more money, for colleagues maybe who are not familiar with financial economics, issuing more money, concretely, it is done through lowering the interest rate for commercial banks. So commercial banks, they get more funding from the central bank, and then they can give this to people. That's one way. So easily the interest rate goes down, and then people can borrow and then spend. The other way is for instance, if civil servants have been complaining about their salaries, the government can easily decide, oh, we're going to increase your salaries. But in reality, it's not an increase, because you get a raise, let's say 10, 50%, but also the prices goes up the same amount. So in reality, your purchasing power have really not improved. So that's why we need to see both sides.
Thank you.
Comment, question? We can update the at least the reader or some of the materials to include this slide, but also the discussion we just had on the devaluation. Also make sure that we share with you a few recommended readings on this. So the section 2. I would really recommend you look at section 1, and also you look at the glossary. The objective of this module is to make sure that we are all familiar with all of these concepts and definitions of economics, education economics, and macroeconomics more globally, so that we all understand what is inflation, GDP, constant prices, nominal prices. We're going to be discussing about debt. which is another important aspect to know. So really the objective is to be able to be familiar with these economics definitions and concepts. So we're going to be moving to the section 2, which is about the role of the government in financing education. So here we're going to be discussing the role of public administrations, public resources, and public expenditure, really looking into the budget cycle. And feel free, I cannot see the chat. If some of you cannot use the microphone, you can write down your question or comments in the chat. We'll be happy to respond to this. So, sorry. Okay. Here we would like first to take a few moments to define what we mean by the public sector, because budgeting, public budgets, financial estimates for the public sector. So it is good to really understand what is the public sector and how it is different from other aspects of the economy. Basically, what we mean by the public sector is the we're going to look at that. We have, I think, we have a picture of that in the coming slides. Is the central government, le gouvernement central, local government in context or in countries where there are local governments, including, for instance, municipalities. In most countries, you have the central government, and then you have local government, such as the city of Beirut. I will assume is some sort of municipality, which they have some level of autonomy in terms of financial autonomy, and it's all of that put together that we call the general government. When reading the government budget, then it is important to understand whether we're talking about all the government or part of it. We'll come back to that later. Public resources, again, we are really just recalling the basics here. We're talking about how the government then is funded. And this is in theory. In practice, it can be a bit more different, but typically the government is funded by taxes, collecting taxes on goods and services, on workers' revenue. There are what you call direct taxes revenue and indirect tax revenues. Direct being that it's paid directly by taxpayers to the state, like the income tax, corporation tax, or property tax. Indirect tax revenues, they are paid indirectly by companies to the states, like the most famous one being the value-added tax, or VAT, meaning that it's not the person who pays the tax who pays directly to the state. It goes through the intermediary of someone else. In that case, if I buy a pen and there is a 20% VAT on it, is the businessman who sell the pen, who's going to collect the VAT, and then is going to give that to the state. That's the difference between a direct and indirect revenue. It doesn't make any difference. It just to be able to understand that what is called the taxpayer, in most cases, is really the normal people who pay the taxes. They pay indirectly by getting directly on their salaries and all the other payments they make, or indirectly through buying goods and services. And here, what is important to know is that in most countries, tax revenues or internal financing, in French we call it ressources domestiques, constitute the most important share of the public resources. That's in most countries. But in countries where there are the countries that are facing issues, so like insecurity or any other, which means actually in a specific context, the government cannot collect tax. It means that it's going to be it's going to need to get funded from other sources. In that case, it can be loans, from the external or grants. So we're going to be talking also about that because, as we know, education in Lebanon is funded to a great extent with external financing. In that case, it can be a temporary solution, but it is not a long-term solution. You cannot get your social services like education or health or any other funded by external financing, which is very unpredictable. That's really the problem with external financing. Sometimes we call it like easy money, but it's very unpredictable. And for instance, as today, as you know, it is in the news everywhere, where since the administration changed in the USA, there has been a lot of we call it aid cuts, like cuts in the foreign aid the American used to give, which is affecting a lot of countries because they were being they were supporting a lot of countries in terms of education service delivery. Any question at this stage?
I have only one question, please.
Sure.
The stamps imposed on legal documentation or the registration fees on the contracts signed here, actually, this is considered as indirect tax?
Can you give an example?
If any contractor or supplier is going to sign a contract with the government, he has to register his contract to pay a registration fees according to the law. He has to put like 4 per thousand on the contract value as a stamps.
Okay.
So I think this is considered as indirect tax.
That's indirect, yes. I'll call it indirect. Actually, these are the direct and indirect are the two biggest families. But under that, of course, you have lots of subcategories. We're going to see, I think we have a table somewhere in the case of Lebanon that outlines a bit more details, the financial statement of the government. I think what you mentioned is sometimes called administrative fees. For instance, I need to go.
Yes.
I need to go. I need the passport, and they just ask me an amount to get my paper signed. Administrative fees. In other contexts, it's called levy. Levy, Levy. These are small fees, either to get administrative services, and in some countries this is still being done, but in other countries, within the effort to improve public services, such small administrative fees are being eliminated in a way to facilitate the access to public services by the citizen, because they are seen as a blockage of the population getting access to public services. But for instance, the business, of course, if you are bidding to get public procurement, etc., you get to pay small fees at different stages of the process. In some cases, sometimes those fees can be recuperated, for instance, at some point, but in other contexts, they are not. Just you pay, whether you win the bid or you do not win, it's something that is forgone. But these are really small fees. I don't think the government will count on those small fees to run the economy. It's just small fees.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Comments? Any comments? I would like really to hear everyone on these discussions. Of course, we just spoke about the official development assistance, ODA. ODA, in other terms, is called foreign aid, foreign assistance, just money given by donors or donor countries to support other countries. And it can be either grants meaning that there is no expectation to be repaid, or it can be loans at very low interest rate. So foreign aid is comprised of loans and grants, but in French we call it des prêts subventionnés. Otherwise, if they are private loans, that they cannot be called as a ODA. They are part of the private sector loans. So we're going to come back to these later, but it is an important topic we can discuss. As we know, at least the education sector in Lebanon is relying quite a lot on loans and grants. What is important to know here is the modality of these loans and grants are being negotiated at how we call it, at conditions that are going to make Lebanon more in depth in the future or not, because when you're relying on foreign assistance, the issue may not be at that specific moment, maybe a few years late when you accumulate loans and at some point you have to repay. So there is a discussion we'll come back to later about the funding education using loans and grants, pros and cons, and what can be done about that, including the risks of relying or being too dependent on external financing, mostly because of the volatility or unpredictability of that source of income. Any question on this? I think we have a few exercises on computing the external the ratio of dependency on rate, which just is the percentage of the external funding in the total government spending. And this is something we use year after year to see, is my country, or even at sector level, because you can have that indicator computed for sector purposes, is my country relying a lot on external funding to run the education? There are no threshold to see it's too much or it's not, but it is considered sometimes that beyond 20%, of aid in the education funding in a country, it's becoming too much. Because if one day the donors decide to pull out their money, because they can do so without alerting you or even discussing with you, that's what happened recently with USAID, for instance. One morning they said we won't be funding anymore this and that, and then you can imagine that some countries, some services have simply stopped their school meal programs or transport programs, or even paying teachers, because in some countries even teacher salaries are funded by foreign aid. And you can imagine the consequences if one day the donor decides not to renew the funding or just to stop it. Any comments? Maybe my question for you will be, how are you being affected by this? Because it's in the news everywhere.
I am familiar with the external financing, but from donors as a grant or a loan. But actually, I have a question that the channeling of transfers from the citizens who work abroad to their parents is considered in the economy?
Yes, it is. Thank you for raising that. I'll let you first finish the remittances you're referring to. Yes, it is. So this is something. I'll be curious to see what is the share of remittances in Lebanon. I think at least the World Bank publishes data, but in some countries, and I believe in Lebanon it's the case, when you have a big diaspora outside of the country, they send money every month to support their families. So the way this is done, it depends. So there are countries that have put in place formal processes of collecting that money, remittances, and use that in the economy. For instance, they have special banks for that. They have
To monitor this.
Yes, to monitor,
those
but also
transfers,
maybe
yes.
to be able to also use that money in a more investment-oriented way. There are countries like, for instance, Nepal. I've seen cases in Nepal and Bangladesh where they have a lot of people working in other countries, and it's a lot of money. But there are also countries that are not there yet. And what happens is that the money will go into the families and relatives, and then they just use that to pay goods and services. So in a way, it's just a support to households, a transfer to household, and then household can pay the school fees, school materials, etc. For instance, in any case, what is clear is that for some countries, I think we can have a practice activity on that. What is the volume of remittances in Lebanon, and what uses do these remittances go to? Just to see, because in some countries can really be huge amount of money. And it is clear that it goes into economy, funding goods and services, either through the families and relatives who receive this funding, or directly through private means for countries that have put in place such mechanism to invest that funding. Yes, that's a very interesting point. And I don't know if someone has data on that, but we can quickly look online. I think the World Bank publishes data on the remittances per country, but I don't know what is the level of the details we can see. It would be good to see how the remittances in Lebanon is being used, and what is the volume of it.
Sorry, excuse me?
Sure.
Yeah, total government spending, does it include the external funding, or it's separate?
Total government spending, yes, that's a good question. I think we're going to look at the financial statement of the government, but maybe, yes, I think the part of the answer is here. External financing that goes through the budget, the national budget, is somehow counted as the public spending, government spending. Okay. For instance, if we're talking about the budget support, general budget support, or sectoral budget support, what is not in the total government spending is the project support, because most of the project support, they are outside of the government budget, and we don't know how much they are, and the government is not involved. But if it's the money going through the budget books, that is considered as a public or government spending.
Actually, I have an answer on this if you want, if I may. Starting maybe 8 years ago, actually, the Ministry of Finance developed a circular or a decision in order to transfer or channel all the funds from the donors to the treasury, to the treasury. And actually, when we have like an agreement with a donor, like a loan or a grant, actually, the transfer of this of the funds should be channeled first to the treasury, to the Ministry of Finance, treasury account, open a credit like Fatah Atimid, and this amount will be allocated in the general budget. And that's how we record the external funds in the local budget. But not all the grants are registered or entered into the treasury. And this is what we have discussed this morning, actually, with Nader. This is my actually response on this.
Yeah, definitely. It's exactly that. So what you mentioned, the funds that are transferred to the treasury are mostly the general budget support and the sectoral budget support. These they go to the treasury, and then they follow the usual process of budget execution, which is different for project funding. In some cases, as you know, they are outside of the Ministry of Education. They are managed by either the donors or other NGOs. And in that case, really, it's not counted as an income, because actually the government spending on the other side, is going to see it, is mostly based on the income and expenditure of the government. So that's really the definition. I think we will double check, but we should have a definition of what the total government spending is meant in the glossary we have online. Moving on quickly, and here, sorry, there are the theoretical definitions, and then there is the reality. Mostly one can be monitored and counted. So when it comes to doing this calculation in reality, then we are faced with issues related to data availability and the quality or the coverage of the data. In some cases, you might even have budget support, but there is no, the information system in the country is not good enough to be able to capture everything. So we can also have a discussion on that. What is the quality of the information system to be able to allow you to have a harmonized account of the domestic resources, but also the foreign donor.
This is the budget
what
support.
is-
This is the right technical term. I'm sorry, Nader.
Sorry?
Okay, go ahead.
This is a budget support. This is the right technical term.
Yes, it's general budget support and education or sectoral budget support, because it can be education, health, etc. Yes.
Excuse me, what is the normal ratio should be for external funding over total government spending in non-developed countries?
Yeah. So what will be the ratio of the here you mean? So as I said, for me, I am not aware of any indicative of normative ratio, but there is something we use, but I don't know if there is a convention on that, is the 20%. 20% meaning that if I have my education sector, even government-wide, that is being funded by beyond 20% by foreign assistance, this starts to be too high. Because as we said, the risks with that is that the predictability of that flow of money, which one day the donor can just decide to stop it. So beyond 20%, it's considered, but it's not like a formal threshold. I'll be curious. This is something I can look into as well, but is also this something that can be very context specific? It depends. I know in some countries countries that are facing issues after a natural disaster or something, it's clear that the economy has been affected. For instance, they are not producing as they used to produce, etc. And when the production goes down, the domestic revenue goes down directly, because the domestic resources, as we've seen, they are taxes applied on the domestic production, goods and services. So if there is a shock, like a natural disaster, automatically, in that case, donors will come in to help. But what is not good is that if that situation was to remain for several years. So assessing the dependency on aid is also something you would like to see over several years, because for 1 year, there can be a situation where the country is too reliant. But if the situation happens every year for 5 years or 10 years, then that's where it becomes problematic.
Okay, thanks.
I will check whether there are international references, but as I said, we mostly use 20%. But I don't know if it's like an official threshold.
Okay.
But Bilal, you wanted to react as well? You are muted.
Actually, I have the curiosity to know about the ratio of the lending of the external funding. What's the ratio? I can ask the Minister of Finance by tomorrow, but and this is applied on the loans, and actually the loans are approved by the Parliament, and this is usually discussed between the Parliament and the Ministry of Finance. If the approval of getting this loan will have negative impact on the economy, and as you said, because we have to settle it on many years, and they do not approve. Actually, they don't approve this loan. But tomorrow I will have a clear response from the Minister of Finance on the ratio, the threshold for approving loans from external donors.
Yeah, that's it. I'll be curious to know that. I will see whether we have information from the central bank or other sources, and then we can discuss that next week. But what I want to add that we're going to discuss about the debt. This is a bit different than for the debt. The threshold are known. Like you may have seen, like in the news, it's everywhere, even here in France, where countries. France is said to be very much in debt because the ratio of debt to GDP has gone beyond 100%. So for the threshold for the debt, there are international standards of where countries should be standing in terms of the ratio, debt to GDP ratio. But for this one, it's a special one. It just EID, because EID, as we said, we can call it like a free money. You are not expected to pay back because it's mostly grants. You can have loans, but loans that have really low interest rates with a long-term payment period. But the one on debt, we're talking mostly about private debt, the debt countries take on national or local commercial banks or external finances such as the big banks and stock markets. Actually, maybe moving on that discussion. So we almost done with the section 2, but we will need at least how much time do we need, Hala, for the last logistic discussion?
So I think we could use 5 minutes, not more than that.
Okay.
Just
So
for the breakout rooms, so that our colleagues can nominate, the group coordinators. I see that there are not many full groups. I'm afraid that probably one person would not have, a group to chat with. And then I also wanted to ask Mr. Nader. So I don't see him in our list of participants, so I would like to know his organization so we can assign him a group as well.
Good. Thank you so much. So we will dedicate the last, let's say, 10 minutes to the logistic discussion, to come back to the group composition and including new participants who joined recently, how to add them to the platform and to the groups. Yes, Carmen?
Sorry, but I just saw the groups. So you already put me and Graziella and Amin in 2 groups, group 6 and group 7. I don't know why.
No, but there for now there is no group 7.
Okay,
we only
I
have
realized
6.
that. Yes, but on the platform we have 2 groups. I don't know why. So just and Amin will not continue the course with us. She already sent an email to you. I think she will not be able to continue the course. And Graziella is not for the moment is not available for the course. I don't know if she will catch up with us on module 2 or 3. I don't know.
Okay, we will be updating the list in the platform. For now, since we're still undergoing changes, we're working in the Google Sheet. I'll make sure to share it now
Okay,
in the
great,
chat.
great. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. So we continue with the discussion on public expenditure. Here the idea of this the next few slides is to look a bit more into details about the how the government gets funded mostly in contexts where they are relying on foreign either foreign aids and also loans. We just saw the main sources of government income, taxes, direct, indirect taxes, and also the external financing. But here we are, of course, generalizing, because actually we have countries that rely mostly on, as we mentioned, the remittances. We will look into that, and it will be good really to have really a practice activity on that, as assessing how much Lebanon gets from Lebanese living abroad, how much they send every year, and how this money is used. What do they use for education, health, etc. Just having the big picture will be useful. And what I mentioned on that is that sometimes it just go into the money goes, remittances, they go into the families and then they're used for many purchases. And in that case, you cannot say that there is a planning behind it. It's like not an investment, etc. But there are countries that are moving into structuring or putting in place formal mechanism to manage that flows, because it can be really important inflows of money. So we come back to that next week, hopefully. And we also spoke about the different ratio aid to the dependency to aid, but also we spoke about debt ratio, debt to GDP. So debt to GDP is really one of the most important indicator to assess whether a country is heavily in debt or not. But of course, again, it's a very general indicator. If you want to go into more details about assessing debt, you need to be able to say, is the debt towards local financiers, in which case the government can have a more flexible way of managing that, or is the debt vis-a-vis external private banks, etc., in which case it's very difficult. So we also get back to that. When it comes to public expenditure, of course, one of the most important things to look at are the, mostly when you're talking about debt, is debt servicing. As you know, debt, now it's in the news everywhere. Debt itself is not the issue. The issue is the interest rate, what the government has to pay every year because they owe someone money. For instance, and the interest rate, when it goes up, it means that the government is going to be paying more. But when it goes down, the government pay less. So the discussion about debt is first, of course, at the level of the volume of the debt, but most importantly, the interest rate, because we have countries that have big debt, but with low interest rate. In that case, the annual payment, because that's what is most important, the annual payment on that debt is really low because the interest rate is low. And when it's not the case, the interest rates are high, then in that case, the debt servicing, in French we call it service de la dette, it can really be significant. And then it's very problematic, because when you have a huge debt servicing, it means that your budget, a big portion of your budget, instead of going into funding social services such as health, education, transport, etc., it goes into repaying debt. And so you have less money available to pay salary for teachers and health workers. That's really the issue. And then we're going to be looking at the real statistics for Lebanon to be able to read this data, but also to understand the challenges. And of course, beyond the recurrent, the debt repayment, we also have recurrent expenditure. In most cases, we're talking about salaries and operational expenditure to be able to run the administration, run the public services. And then you have the capital expenditure, which is called in other contexts, or in some context, development budget. In this case, we're talking about everything related to long-term investments, buildings, big equipment that are called durable goods, which means their duration of consumption goes beyond 1 year. So that's the main components of expenditure from the expenditure side of the budget. Here at this stage, we thought it would be useful to be able to have an example of we call these financial statements, but government financial statements. And I don't know about you, but here you can see when we're talking about public government finances, there are a lot of similarities with public finances, the way a person or a family manages their funding. You have a source of income, which can be salary, or you have properties where you earn an income. So that's the income side of your budget. And then you have a number of expenses. You have children, so you have to pay schools for them, you pay transport, pay food, etc. So government budget is very similar to that, but at a very macro level, because it is a sum of all the households in the country, all the companies, public administration, etc. But in the essence, public finance and private finance, they are very similar the way at least we read them. So this is a typical financial statement. We were able to find the one from 2021, but if there is a more recent one, if there is a more recent one, we can use that. 2021 is a bit outdated, but what we wanted to show you is a typical financial report the government uses. In this case, it's monthly. When you have a monthly financial statement, actually, you can also see in economics, we call it the economic cycles, meaning that from January to December, the government does not raise income and spend that in the same way. So there are a lot of variations, but that's not what is important today. What is important is to be able to see that in a typical financial statement, this is a fiscal performance. We have different types of financial statements. You have the what is called like the budget transactions. The way of reading this is really by titles. So you have the big title here is point 1, which is comprised about 1.1 revenues, 1.2 expenditures. So this, for instance, for this year, here I think we have the total. It is a million Lebanese pounds, national currency. In total, for this year, 2021, total revenues were, I think it's 18 million, 18.8. And then you can see the different components of these revenue. First is the tax revenues. Remember, we're talking about tax. So we have custom revenues. So these are taxes paid when people are importing goods into the country. We have the VAT. We have the real estate registration fees. For Bilal, with your comments on the fees, these are typical real estate registration. If I'm building a house, there are a number of fees I need to pay, etc., and non-tax revenues. So all of these put together are what are considered as tax revenues. But you can see that not all of them are equally important. For instance, out of the 18.8 million, I'm trying to see which component is the biggest one. The second one, this is somewhere like a 7.5. We have the VAT, which is a 4.8. So these two are the two biggest sources of income for Lebanon. Probably this is for 1 year. We have to look at these for several years to see whether there is this structure is constant, because it can differ from 1 year to another. But typically, this is one way of understanding where the country is getting its money from. I don't know if there is a comment before going far. But typically, I think out of 18.8, you have yes, this one, mixed tax revenues, the VAT, and the last one, this 3.5, is the non-tax revenues. There are experts. I think if you look on the website of the Ministry of Finance, they spend a lot of time assessing this, because you need to be able to understand where the income is coming from. Is it a stable income or not? And also, ministries of finance, they conduct quarterly risk assessment analysis to see whether the government is going to collect the income as expected. As you know, in terms of public budgets, at the time the government issues the budget, they don't have the money. They say they're going to be using. They expect to collect that money on the different sources like taxes, etc. And as soon as they collect the money, then they send this money to the spending departments, education, health, transport, etc. So there is always a tension between revenues and expenditure, because what the government said they're going to spend, they don't have it yet. They hope to get it through collecting the taxes. So that's really what is the difficult about managing public funds. On the expenditure side, we have then, of course, the different component of the expenditure. We have the general expenditure, then we have interest payment. This is what we want to say. Sorry, can't take it back. So we have expenditure here. We have two main subcategories: 1 to 1 general expenditure, 1 to 2 interest payment, and 1 to 3 foreign debt principal repayments. And you can see, for instance, for the expenditure for the same year, we had 15.7. Actually, it's in billion, because here you can add also. It's the figures are in millions, and out of the 15.7, roughly 12.9 went into general expenditure. We have 2.2.
Electricity delivery, yeah, electricity.
Yes. And then this we discussed last time. I remember electricity delivery.
Yeah.
And also then we have foreign debt principal repayment, which is the last line. We have this table in the reader. I would really welcome you to go and look at it, because it really helps understand where the government gets its money, and then how it is spent. And then, of course, you can compute a lot of ratios out of this to see, for instance, you can, by comparing the revenues and the expenditure, you can see, is the country in deficit when the expenditure are higher than the revenues? I want to spend more than I have. In that case, I need to be able to we call it a deficit. When you need to get a loan, because otherwise your regular income does not allow you to pay for all the expenses you are planning to do. it could also be the other way around. I think for this specific year, it looks like the revenues were much higher than the expenditure, 18.8 versus 15.7. So the country was not in deficit. Actually, it was a surplus. This is the budget, what they call the deficit or surplus. If it's negative, it's deficit. If it's positive, it's surplus. Surplus being a very positive point. And in that case, actually, when you have a surplus, so that money can be used to repay debt or being invested in something else. Questions here? You can really look at these at your pace, but we thought it would be good to know. In the reader, we have all the types of financial statements, because this is just one example. There are many others which are presented differently because they give different situation of the economy. It is just a zoom out of the other. So I would really welcome questions. Is this something familiar to you, the government financial statements? Do you happen to use this when you're working, preparing the budget?
So actually here in the ministry, the one who is involved in the preparation of the budget is the head of the accounting department. Actually, Sarah, I think Sarah Harib is here. She is assigned by Mr. Osama Maalim, but they are familiar with the budget and the forms of the local budget of the government, because they are managing the local budget for the Ministry of Education. But actually, it is easy, here all the income comes from the taxes, as VAT, taxes, customs, direct and indirect taxes.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much, Pilar. Let's continue. We have a few slides left, but this is very straightforward because we wanted also beyond the indicators on public finance and macroeconomics. There are also a number of indicators when it comes to financing education. So these are typically the one we use usually. I will assume that you are familiar with them. The idea is just to be able to distinguish, for instance, between what is meant by unit costs or the intra-sectoral allocation of funding, how the Ministry of Education, once you have your budget, how do you decide to give these percentage to primary education, this share to secondary education and higher education? What are, we call it trade-offs, or in French we call it arbitrage? How are these decisions are made? There are decisions which are made at the level of the government, the whole of government. But once the budget for education is provided, then there is a discussion that is about how should we allocate the education budget among the different expenditure. So the discussion can be at the level of education, between levels of education. It could be also at the level of nature of expenditure. Do we want to increase teacher salaries or teacher numbers? Do we want to increase other fees needed to run schools, etc.? So this is also important to consider. And one way of looking at that is, of course, understanding the mechanism. Last time we spent some time looking at this, how the education in Lebanon is funded. We spent the first few sections actually looking at the global, like the whole of government funding. Now this is really at the sectoral level. So at sectoral level, funding for education, of course, it comes from the public financing. So this is the share or the money you get from the government. On top of that, you also may have external projects which are directly within the Ministry of Education. As we mentioned, which do not go through the treasury, because if it goes to the treasury, in that case, it is considered as a public. But in addition to this, you have a lot of external, sometimes we call it off budget. Sorry, I cannot write off budget funding, external funding. In this case, it will be on budget, what goes through this channel here. And then in addition to this, of course, you have the private financing, private mostly being the households. As we said, of course, we know that families pay a lot of money for the education of their children. And we know that it can be a significant portion of their income. And my assumption, this is yet to be confirmed, most of the remittances, they will go through the household, and then household use that to pay for all the expenses. So remittances, if we were to, sorry, I can't write correctly. If we were to analyze the remittances in the case of Lebanon, we have to see it through the contribution to families, and then families using that to pay for school services. Is this clear?
Yeah.
And of course, this is a very illustrative way of understanding education financing, but really very simple. You have what you receive from the government. This is the annual budget allocations. What you receive from other donors who are off budget, like specific projects, small or big NGOs, and then payments by user fees. So payments by families, we call it household expenditure, user fees, etc. But they are all part of the same group, is that payments by families to send their kids to school for different purposes, including on, because we have contexts where school education is said to be free. There are no school fees, but families and children are expected to pay more other items in addition to school fees. So you can have a school that is said to be free, but which is expensive because there are a lot of other expenses that are expected beyond school fees. And in the reader, you look at the different computation you can make. For instance, there are, if you want to assess whether a given country is investing enough in the education of the country, you can compare the budget of the education with the total funding of the total budget of the country. For instance, there is this international, in this case, there are international thresholds where countries are expected to spend between 15 and 20% of their budget for education if they want to achieve the international goals such as the SDG 4. This is the UNESCO recommendation that countries should spend at least between 15 and 20% of their budget. That's one way. So we're going to be computing such indicators. And when you do that over several years, then you can see is Lebanon, or has Lebanon been investing in education? And then you can also compare that indicator with neighboring countries to see how are we doing compared to other countries in the region. These are typical indicators you compute when you for instance analyzing the budget. Questions about that before we wrap up? This is what I was mentioning. So I think these are you can read at your pace, and we have practice activities and additional materials online. These are just indicators to assess the adequacy, meaning the volume of financing for education vis-a-vis a number of other criteria, and then internally the intra-sectoral allocations. As you know, in countries where basic education is still really low, there is no primary completion, universal completion, etc. It is recommended that in those countries, governments spend a bigger share of their education budget, on the lower levels of education, from KG to primary, and in most cases lower secondary, so that at least we have an equitable access to lower levels. And but it's not always the same. So being able to assess how is the education budget being allocated to the different levels of education is one way of assessing that. Is the education investment being put, being used in an equitable way? Because you can also have systems where a big part of the funding is going to higher education, but higher education is only for a small portion of the population. The biggest portion is into lower levels. So there is a discussion. It's really a political discussion. How do we want to use that? Do we want to make it an elite education school, or do we want to make it a popular education system where we mostly fund lower levels? So I'll stop the discussion here, but you have all the details in the reader. You have practice activities, but also if you would like to speak with us to go back to this, you can reach out, and we can have dedicated sessions to continue this. But we're supposed to terminate with module 1. It was a reminder because we have already discussed this, but I will invite you really to spend some time reading the materials, doing the practice, and if there are issues, feel free to reach out to us tomorrow or Monday to have a specific discussion on that. Otherwise, next week we'll move on module 2. Thank you. Maybe Hala, you can take it from here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So I think for now we're going to be split into rooms. I am aware that, for example, group 1 is empty. We don't have participants in group 1. Group 2 will have 3. Group 3 also 3 participants. Group 4 2 participants. Group 5, I think we only have 1 participant from that group, Madame Nada. So I think you don't have to really join the group. It's just that it would be great if you could also reach out to your colleagues and think about the group activity and how you guys will organize yourselves, because we have a deadline coming up for the activities for module 1. So we have group activity 1 by Monday 29th of September at I think at 9 p.m. And then there are also individual activities. So please feel free to check the platform. And then for group 6, there is Madame Dania and also Madame Carmen. I'm unable to assign Madame Carmen to a group. I'm not sure if you're using probably the phone or maybe an unupdated version of Teams. But it would be great if Madame Dania and Madame Carmen could be in contact to also discuss the group logistics. Yes, Madame Carmen, please.
I don't know what the problem with the Teams, but I'm okay with it. I'm online. So I will discuss on WhatsApp with Daniel, but I think there is a problem in the platform. They assigned for me. I was just looking at the platform right now. So in the group work, I have group 6 work, and I didn't do any work, so I don't know what the problem. Okay, so if you module 1 group activity, I'm in group 6, and there is module 1 group activity, group 6. I didn't do anything for that. Even in April, or I don't know when we started the course earlier, I don't know if we uploaded a group activity. This group activity, I wasn't in it. This is for Madame Nada Georges and Rania and, you know.
Sure. Thank you so much. We're taking notes. I will make sure to go through the group listings on the platform to update it to whatever changes we're undergoing now. And then also please feel free to reach out if there's any question or concern. For now, I think let's move to our groups, and of course for the current group 6, we have Madame Carmen and Madame Dania for the time being.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to open up the groups right now. And I'm also going to share the Google link. So please feel free to click on it and chat with your colleagues, your team members. Thank you. Colleagues, please feel free to join the groups.
I don't have a group invitation.
Yes, for you, Madame Carmen, I'm unable to assign you to group 6 for technological problems. So I'm wondering if you could reach out to Madame Dania and maybe
We are
coordinate.
already talking on WhatsApp, so it's fine.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Mr. Nader, I think I'm going to assign you to group 4. We have 2 colleagues in group 4, so let's assign you there. Thank you.
Sorry, I have a question. Can Nader join my group to be included in my group?
Which group? So group 2?
Yes, group 2. Is it possible?
I think it is because group. Okay, so group 4 and group 3 originally
Because his
it
office
was
is
5
beside
members.
my office, and yeah, and
Okay,
actually
no
we are
problem.
working together for the. No
No
problem.
problem.
Okay, thank you
No
very much.
problem.
Thanks.
Please feel free to
Thanks.
join the group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So Mr. Bilal, your group 2. So for group 7, for group 5, we have Madame Nada. I see you're the only one joining us today from the group, but I understand that your group has already did the activities back in April, right? Madame Nada, can you hear me? Mr. Rashad, please feel free to join group 3. I don't know if you guys finished discussing or you want me to assign you the group. I see that the spreadsheet is still empty. Maybe I'll go ahead and join the different groups to discuss with them and see if they need support. So before I jump to the other groups, Madame Carmen, were you able to speak with Madame Dania for group 6?
Yes, yes, we are talking on WhatsApp, so it's fine
Okay,
for us.
okay, that's
Okay.
great. Because we need to fill in the spreadsheets. Maybe
The
if
phone
you,
numbers and something, yeah?
yeah, if you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to
I'm
create a
filling it
WhatsApp
right
group,
now.
okay.
No,
Because
we already
we
did our WhatsApp group, huh? We already did it now, and I'm just adding the numbers for people that are already, يعني for Cynthia, for me, and Dania. The others, I don't know about if they will continue
okay.
the
Sounds great.
course
Thank
or
you
not.
so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day and see you next week. Also for Mr. Omar. So for group 4, were you able to fill in the information on the spreadsheet.
No,
I see it empty. So basically, to summarize, we need you guys as team members, as a group, to discuss together what's the best way to communicate. If you want to create a WhatsApp group, to fill in your WhatsApp numbers, nominate a group coordinator to facilitate
Yes, but
communication.
I meet only Mr. George Sanos, and George he didn't have any access to the course yet. Maybe next time we can collaborate with Madam Georgia and Mr. Rabi and Laya to fill and complete the task.
I see. It's just that we do have a deadline by next Monday. So if you could kindly reach out soon, maybe this week, so you could coordinate this, because there is a group activity deadline by next Monday, other than also the individual activities. So I'll let you handle this. I see that we do have their email addresses. So for group 4, I'll let you and Mr. George handle this. Please. Yeah, that would be great. I think I will need to jump to group 2 to see if they need any support from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you for you.
Thank you. See you next week.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and see you next week on Tuesday.
Thank you, Ella. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, you too.
Thank you.